Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. The top stories today. The U.S. Senate gets back to business in Washington with a disagreement over the next virus aid package. Venezuelan authorities captured a group of men on an alleged failed attack aimed at socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro. 2 U.S. citizens are among the group. 2 Republican senators are asking the FBI director to examine the agency's handling of the Michael Flynn case. Unsealed documents show possible misconduct from within the Bureau. And Australia and New Zealand are discussing a safe zone of travel between the 2 countries as they begin to ease their virus restrictions. President Trump this morning is strongly denying U.S. government involvement in an attempted incursion into Venezuela. The nation's socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro said they've captured 2 U.S. citizens who were part of the attempt.
President Trump on Tuesday said the Venezuela situation has nothing to do with the U.S. government, referring to 2 U.S. citizens detained by Caracas. Venezuelan socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro said Monday on state television authorities had arrested 13 terrorists. He alleges the men were involved in a plot coordinated with Washington to oust him.
Fueron capturados en esta incursión los estadounidenses.
He also named Luke Alexander Denman. They are former U.S. Special Forces soldiers. Maduro said Sunday the men attempted to enter the country on speedboats from neighboring Colombia. Maduro showed a collection of belongings said to be those of the suspects laid out, including military uniform and a badge of a U.S. flag. Maduro said Venezuelan authorities also found silver core ID cards on both of the U.S. citizens. U.S. authorities and officials working under interim President Juan Guaido issued statements suggesting Maduro's allies fabricated the assault to draw attention away from the country's problems.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says it's time for senators to show up and get back to work. The Senate resumed in-person meetings yesterday after nearly 6 weeks away.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell speaking Monday as senators reconvene.
If it's essential that brave healthcare workers, grocery store workers, truck drivers, and many other Americans continue to carefully show up for work, then it's essential that their U.S. senators carefully show up ourselves.
U.S. senators return to Washington for the first time in nearly 6 weeks. High on McConnell's agenda is filling what he called critical national security posts. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer wanted to keep the focus on the virus.
Senate Republicans should concentrate on helping us recover from COVID-19.
He listed those he deemed in need of financial support.
We need more money to flow to hospitals.
Community health centers, nursing homes, essential workers, renters, and homeowners.
And state and local governments are stretched to the breaking point.
Democrats want up to $1 trillion to help state and local governments, putting them at odds with Republicans. McConnell referred to the country's national debt as a matter of genuine concern during the last round of CCP virus aid bill debate. Republicans are demanding liability protections for businesses as a condition for moving forward on any bill. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives chose to remain in recess this week. The Trump administration last week offered Congress 1,000 coronavirus tests as a precautionary measure. McConnell and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi turned them down, prompting President Trump to question whether Congress was essential. Senate Democrats sought $30 billion for a national testing strategy in April, calling it crucial to reopen the country. President Trump wrote on Twitter, by Congress not wanting the special 5-minute testing apparatus, they are saying that they are not essential. The rest of Washington remains under a stay-at-home order.
Republican lawmakers Jim Jordan and Mike Johnson are demanding answers from the FBI Director Christopher Wray. They've told him to immediately review his agency's actions in its investigation of President Trump's former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. In their letter, the senators say FBI documents unsealed on April 29th show the FBI had apparently sought to set a perjury trap for Flynn during an interview in 2017.
Included is a handwritten note reportedly written by Bill Priestap, the then Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. His note asks if the FBI's goal in interviewing Flynn was set to seek the truth or to catch Flynn in a lie. What's our goal? Truth, admission, or to get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired? The note read. Flynn then pleaded guilty to one count of lying to FBI agents during the interview, for which he faces a maximum prison sentence of 5 years. The unsealed documents mark yet another twist in Flynn's story, whose life was turned upside down after he agreed to become Trump's national security advisor. The president said on Thursday that the FBI tormented Flynn, but that he would be back bigger and better, many expecting the president to pardon him.
President Trump has remained at the White House for much of the last 2 months. But today he's headed to Arizona to visit a mask factory that's ramping up production.
The White House says the Honeywell Aerospace faculty is expanding its production of N95 masks to meet the high demand needed for healthcare workers amid the pandemic. The last time the president left his residence, with exceptions to Camp David and the Lincoln Memorial, was in late March. That's when he watched the USNS hospital ship depart from its home naval base in Norfolk, Virginia, on its way to New York. White House officials are also taking precautions to try to prevent Trump and Vice President Mike Pence from exposure to the virus. In June, the president is expected to deliver a commencement address at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point.
And New York City is closing more streets to traffic so that New Yorkers can enjoy the warmer weather and still have enough space to social distance. They say the city's parks weren't enough.
New York City has closed some streets to vehicle traffic, expanded sidewalks, and created temporary bike lanes to offer New Yorkers more space to stay apart outside. This as CCP virus lockdown measures continue.
Right, we have all beautiful weather and free time on a beautiful block, free space. Kids get to do what they want, and I get to give them more independence than I ever would.
What does it feel like to skateboard down a totally empty New York City street?
I'm good because then no one's there blocking me. Good because my mom can't boss me around for where I can go. Yay!
Pedestrians strolled around, walked their dogs, skateboarded, biked, and enjoyed the warm weather while walking in the middle of closed-off streets on Monday. The extra space can be found on East End Avenue from 83rd to 89th Streets. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said last week that the city would create a minimum of 40 miles of open streets. He said the city would focus on streets in and around parks, where officials expect people to congregate as the weather gets warmer.
It's nice because there's a little bit more space. Super weird because it's still New York City and there's still cars coming. And then you factor in that we're just part of the new normal.
So that it could be, they can social distance a little more. So, because in the park it's a little crowded. Out here you have the park and the street. So I feel it's going to be pretty good. I have a good feeling about this.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has announced a 4-phase plan for reopening New York. He said the manufacturing and construction industries would be among the first to get back to work.
And the city's subway cars are getting hosed down. Transit authority workers were seen disinfecting trains on Monday. The subway beneath the Big Apple is taking the unprecedented step of halting its overnight service. The move will allow transit workers to disinfect train cars amid the pandemic. The subway system and its sprawling 600-plus miles of track crisscross 4 of New York's 5 boroughs. It's known for its round-the-clock service, but train lines will be closed to riders between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. beginning May 6th. It's a likely step towards bigger changes. That's as the U.S.'s largest mass transit system works to rebound from slashed ridership. It's normalling a whopping 5 million passengers a day. The city's buses will also get cleaned every night. And in California, the governor is letting some businesses reopen, but with restrictions starting this Friday. But one business owner is going against the grain.
One California gym is reopening early, going against the non-essential business shutdown. The owner says he's letting gym members decide.
I'm big on the Constitution. So if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't. If you want to come in, great, use it. If you don't want to come in, stay home. That's all it comes down to. That's the second reason of reopening and going against the grain. Those two things, mental health and freedom. Like, at the end of the day, it's freedom.
This woman lost the love of her life 8 months ago. For her, the gym is therapeutic.
I challenge the governor to come work out with me. I challenge the governor to go through any kind of hard time, to get out behind your desk, have any kind of hard time, have a loss, have depression, have anything, and then come into the gym for a week, and then I would love him to tell me personally that the gym is not essential for his mental health and for his physical health. He would change his mind, guaranteed.
The gym reopened Friday. There have been no calls to shut it down. Some say there's a reason.
Well, as funny as it may sound, I heard that half of the cops work out here, and we actually talked to a couple of cops the other day down at the gas station, and they said, "Oh, we're not going to shut Jake down."
The owner says he isn't worried reopening will spread the virus.
Look at the CDC. I'm a numbers guy. I don't think on emotion. I think on logic and numbers, and that's it. That's all. It's not going to happen. Watch, you'll see.
California reports over 2,200 deaths from the virus.
The Supreme Court held its first ever remote oral argument on Monday. Justice Clarence Thomas has long been the silent justice, but he finally broke his silence.
The U.S. Supreme Court on Monday pulled off not one, but two historic firsts, conducting its first ever hearing by teleconference and providing a live feed of the audio, making it the first time ever that the public could listen live to the High Court's proceedings. Chief Justice John Roberts served as a sort of master of ceremonies in a case involving hotel reservation website Booking.com, which is looking to trademark its name.
We'll hear argument this morning in case 1946, the United States Patent and Trademark Office versus Booking.com.
Conservative Justice Clarence Thomas even did something he almost never does. He spoke. Thomas's questions during Monday's oral arguments were the first he has asked since March of 2019. His previous question came 3 years before that. Here's his back and forth Monday with an attorney from the Trademark Office.
Could Booking acquire an 800 number, that's a vanity number, 1-800-BOOKING, for example, that is similar to, for 1-800-Plumbing, which is a registered mark?
The core problem with Booking.com is that it allows respondent to monopolize booking on the internet because of the fact that longer domain names of respondents' competitors like ebooking.com and hotelbooking.com can include Booking.com. That is not as obviously true of something like 1-800-BOOKING.
Liberal Justice Stephen Breyer then said he had the same question as Thomas's, which he phrased slightly differently. A small moment of levity for listeners came when Justice Sonia Sotomayor appeared to do what many of us have done when on a conference call, mistakenly kept her phone on mute when called upon to speak.
Justice Sotomayor. Justice Sotomayor.
I'm sorry, Chief.
The court has scheduled teleconference arguments for a total of 10 cases over the next 2 weeks.
The Deputy National Security Advisor spoke on Monday at the Symposium for U.S.-China Relations. He started his career as a Beijing-based journalist and today critiqued China and its policies. He even addressed Chinese viewers directly in Mandarin.
The ups and downs in U.S.-China relations.
U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Pottinger discussed U.S.-China relations in depth at the Symposium on U.S. Diplomacy. As a former reporter in China, he knows it takes courage to speak to the press in today's China amid the regime's widespread censorship. In Mandarin, Pottinger echoes whistleblower Dr. Li Wenliang's statement to the press before he died from the CCP virus.
李医生告诉记者，我认为 健康的社会应该有多个声音，我不赞成公权力的过度干预。李医生使用的是胡适的大白话。
In 2017, China's Communist Party broke the deal they had signed 20 years earlier. It was supposed to protect Hong Kong's social, legal, and economic freedoms. Pottinger says the Chinese regime uses the law to rule instead of abiding by it.
As 依法治国, which is a little sleight of hand that means using the law to run a country rather than the law being supreme to the men and women who have the privilege of serving in government.
After Hong Kong's government proposed a controversial extradition bill last April, millions of Hong Kongers took to the streets to protest. The British Secretary of Foreign Affairs has said Hong Kong was experiencing its greatest turmoil since its handover. Fears over the Chinese regime clamping down on the territory had led to months of violent protests.
New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern joined Australia's coronavirus cabinet meeting today as the neighbouring countries discuss a travel bubble between them.
Australia and New Zealand discussed a travel bubble between the two on Tuesday. Both countries have been planning a safe zone of travel that would allow residents to travel between the countries without a mandatory quarantine period on arrival. But Australian leader Scott Morrison didn't give a date for when Aussies and Kiwis can take again to the skies.
The Prime Minister and I have been now for several weeks been talking about a safe travel zone between Australia and New Zealand. It is still some time away, but it is important to flag it because it is part of the road back.
New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern joined Australia's coronavirus cabinet meeting on Tuesday and also said no rush decision would be made until both countries were confident that the virus was at bay.
I think simply the position that I would take on behalf of New Zealand is that when we feel comfortable and confident that we both won't receive cases from Australia, but equally that we won't export them, then that will be the time to move.
New Zealand recorded no new coronavirus cases for a second day in a row on Tuesday. Meanwhile, rules on social distancing have been rolled back in some Australian states and territories. However, restrictions on large gatherings and non-essential travel are still in place.
Up next, the Chinese regime is constantly trying to marginalize Taiwan. We look at how it influences politicians to suppress Taiwan and expand its own clout. After the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and bite-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Welcome back. Taiwan's virus response is setting an example for the rest of the world, but it also highlights Taiwan's absence from the World Health Organization because of pressure from Beijing. The Chinese regime's efforts to marginalize Taiwan doesn't stop with the World Health Organization either. Beijing's attempts at influence have reached Western countries too. Today we look at how the Chinese regime seeks to influence American politicians to suppress Taiwan and expand its own clout.
Let me read you an excerpt of a letter from a Chinese diplomat. It was China's consul general in New York, sent a letter last month to the speaker of one of your state legislatures. Here's what the letter said in part. It said, quote, "As we all know, Taiwan is part of China. Avoid engaging in any official contact with Taiwan."
The letter urged the state legislature not to congratulate Tsai Ing-wen, who at the time had been just re-elected as president of the Republic of China, known as Taiwan.
Think about that. You add a diplomat from China assigned here to the United States, a representative of the Chinese Communist Party in the New York City, sending an official letter urging that an American elected official shouldn't exercise his right to freedom of speech.
In a speech at a governor's conference in February, Pompeo said the Houston Chinese consulate also sent a letter to a former Mississippi governor last year. The letter threatened to cancel Chinese investment if he chose to travel to Taiwan. He said efforts like this are happening all across the country and not just by Chinese diplomats. He added that Beijing's Overseas Influence Agency played a role as well. Pompeo pointed to a U.S.-China governors summit last year, marketed as an opportunity to boost economic collaboration.
It was an event co-hosted by the National Governors Association and something called the Chinese People's Association for Friendship and Foreign Countries. Sounds pretty harmless. What the invitation did not say is that the group I just mentioned, is the public face of the Chinese Communist Party's official foreign influence agency, the United Front Work Department.
In 2018, a congressional commission published a 40-page report about China's United Front Department and its operations. It says, quote, "The United Front strategy uses a range of methods to influence overseas Chinese communities, foreign governments, and other actors to take actions or adopt positions supportive of Beijing's preferred policies," end quote.
It's essentially political warfare / intelligence operations designed to promote the Communist Party of China's strategic objectives.
Many U.S. states have closed trade and investment relationships with China. Take New York, for example. It's one of the top destinations for Chinese investment, and China was the state's second largest trade partner last year. Based on ties like these, the Chinese regime's influence agency and local proxies, including pro-Beijing Chinese American organizations, seek to cultivate relations with local politicians to expand Beijing's clout and foster positive views of the regime. According to former CIA analyst and Chinese espionage expert Peter Mattis, by participating in United Front-sponsored events, American politicians have unwittingly helped reinforce the image of the Communist Party's strength.
What has been the harm of this? One of the biggest ones is that Western politicians have become symbols for the party.
In June 2019, the New York State Senate passed a resolution naming October 1st of that year the state's China Day. October 1st, 1949 was the day communists took over China. Many Chinese people considered an annual day of mourning instead of celebration. Less than 4 months later, on the proclaimed China Day, thousands of Hong Kongers took to the streets to protest. Police fired tear gas, and one protester was shot by a live round. It happened at the same time the Chinese regime was celebrating its 70-year founding anniversary in Beijing. Besides relationship building, the Chinese regime has also systematically analyzed American politicians. Last year, a Beijing-backed think tank produced a report assessing all 50 U.S. governors' stance on China. Each of them was labeled either friendly, hardline, or ambiguous.
Whether you're viewed by the CCP as friendly or hardline, know that it's working you. Know that it's working the team around you.
Pompeo explained that people can still do business with China, but he urged local leaders to be vigilant against the regime's influence efforts, as it has methodically analyzed America's system and learned to take advantage of its openness.
And coming up, it's not just people who've been missing haircuts. 2 schnauzers got much-needed trims in Thailand. See the new haircuts and more after the break.
How do we get to this point? Back in December, the coronavirus was already spreading in Wuhan, and the Chinese Communist Party was covering it up and punishing the whistleblowers who dared to report the truth. Their actions led to this pandemic, which now has us, in America, stuck in our homes and losing our jobs. To this very day, the Communist Party is still lying, making it more critical than ever for us to get honest reporting about China. The Epoch Times is able to bring you the uncensored truth because we maintain a network of underground sources inside of China, hidden from the censors of the communist government. For instance, our investigative team has been contacting individual funeral homes, hospitals, and they've obtained leaked internal documents which show that China's official numbers are massively underreported by a factor of at least 10. If you're looking for an honest source of news that can keep you informed and safe, check out The Epoch Times. Go to readepoch.com and try your first month for just $1 and get real journalism delivered straight to your doorstep.
Welcome back. Carnival Cruise Line says some of its ships will be heading out to sea again on August 1st, just 1 week after a virus no-sail order is set to expire.
Carnival Cruise Line said it will start its gradual return to service. The ships will depart from 3 ports, Miami, Port Canaveral, Florida, and Galveston, Texas. But the cruise line is also extending its suspension of service from other North American and Australian ports until the end of August. The company says it's reaching out to customers who already have tickets for that time period to offer them alternatives. Carnival also says it will use the time before returning to service to improve health safety measures for its passengers and crews. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued a no-sail order in March, banning Carnival and all cruise lines from sailing from U.S. ports. The CDC later extended the order to July 24th.
2-year-old schnauzers Chewy and Miley got a long-awaited haircut in Thailand, one of the several businesses in the capital city which reopened on Monday after weeks of being shuttered.
Paws on the table and piles of fur on the floor. 2-year-old schnauzers Chewy and Miley are getting all styled up. The scruffy little canines are getting a long-awaited haircut at the Modern Dog Grooming and School in Thailand. It's one of many businesses which reopened in Bangkok on Monday after more than a month on pause. But now owners arrive in face masks and there's disinfectant at the door. Chewy and Miley's owner, Siwat Kusakuntam, was one of the salon's many relieved customers.
It's been almost 3 months since my dogs have had a haircut. Their fur gets tangled up and I don't have the equipment to smooth it out. I think when a dog's fur gets matted, it must be painful for them.
The salon owner, Sukum Nuangjanpat, says Modern Dog is taking extra precautions to keep both its staff and their furry clients safe.
The owners are not allowed inside here at all. We will discuss with dog owners the hairstyle, time taken, and pickup time via online chat prior to the cut.
And even inside the salon, it's not quite business as usual. Grooming takes place at stations spaced over 1 meter apart, and the salon must close for an hour before it's ready for the next customer. Grooming equipment is promptly sterilized, and all pups' personal equipment must be left behind before coming inside. And even though the salon hasn't been able to serve as many dogs as usual, the extra precautions seem to be worth it to keep the pups both safe and well groomed.
And still to come. Mother's Day is this Sunday, but the global pandemic has put some gifts like brunch and hugs out of the question. Hear about some other gift ideas when we return. Welcome back. NFL teams will not play any games outside of the US this coming season. The league says it wants to focus on the well-being of its players and personnel. According to the NFL's website, teams were supposed to play 1 game in Mexico City and 4 games in London. The Arizona Cardinals, Atlanta Falcons, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Miami Dolphins were all set to be home teams for international series games, but now that's not going to happen. The NFL said it hopes to return to having international games in Mexico and the UK in 2021. Meanwhile, the NFL will release its full 2020 schedule on Thursday in a 3-hour primetime television special. And in case you needed a reminder, Mother's Day is this Sunday. The National Retail Federation says Americans are ready to spend more money on their moms this year.
Folks are expected to spend on average more than $200 on gifts for dear mother. According to a National Retail Federation survey, that's about $8 more than last year. So what's mom got to look forward to? Most people they talked to, 74%, said they'd be getting mom a card. 64% will get her flowers, and 49% are going for gift cards. Electronics, housewares, gardening tools, and books are also popular gifts. This year, you probably can't take your mother out for brunch, as many restaurants are still closed. You might not even be able to give her a hug, since stay-at-home orders remain in place in much of the country. But it may feel more important than ever to celebrate Mother's Day and appreciate the strong, inspiring women in your life.
And that's the latest updates for now. Thank you for tuning in. You can catch up again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.